Welcome to The Bottom Line, where we examine trending and important news. As testimony continues at the Commission of Inquiry into the 2020 general and regional elections rolls on, another witness has highlighted the cozy relationship between former senior staff at the Guyana Elections Commission and officials of the APNU-AFC coalition. These GCOM officials mounted what is referred to as the most clumsy attempt to rig an election in favor of the incumbent APNU-AFC government, in full view of agents of political parties, accredited observers, members of the diplomatic corps, and the media and world at large. Leader of the Liberty and Justice Party and Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lennox Schumann, took to the stand to provide evidence to the Commission on the third day of the hearings. Schumann painted a picture of the close relationship that was enjoyed by the APNU plus AFC politicians and GCOM staff.
Before Mr. Mingo came into and before all of the government ministers marched into the building, I was part of a group of people who stood at a door inside Ashman's building on the second floor, where all of the observers and the diplomats were summoned to a meeting convened by Ms. Cummings. I stood at the door and listened to her threaten to revoke the accreditation of these observers, and she was accompanied at that meeting by Roxanne Myers. A phone call came through on her phone, which Ms. Myers was holding. She gave it to Ms. Karen Cummings. She took the phone call and then exited the room.
Schumann recalled that Myers videoed persons but restricted observers and party reps from taking photos. This, he said, occurred at the GCOM building in Kingston when persons tried to take photos of the bed sheet, which was set up to display Region 4 results.
When we arrived, there was one projector, there was a cardboard box. If I could put some direction to this.
Please do.
In the northwest corner was a projector on a table with some documents on top of that. In the eastern corner, there was a massive cardboard box with a bed sheet strewn very loosely on that cardboard box. On the western to southwest corner were all chairs for party agents and observers to sit.
Again, party supporters protested because persons were unable to see the figures. Schumann said that Myers was walking around taking pictures of persons at the location. When he protested after his photo was taken, Schumann was told to leave. Leader of the Liberty and Justice Party, Lennox Schumann's account of events at the Commission of Inquiry into the elections implicated top GCOM employees, including Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowingfield and Deputy Chief Elections Officer Roxanne Myers, just as it implicated lower-ranking employees, some of whom were caught on camera tampering with elections data.
The tabulation process had paused because the GCOM staff were a bit exhausted and tired, and I inquired as to why to a certain extent, and he said that they had been there all night going through the tabulation. One of them was pregnant and they wanted to take a break. In fact, if I recall correctly, they wanted to stop the tabulation for the night and resume the next day, the following day. I was appalled because I know that ample funds were allocated to the Guyana Elections Commission to undertake such an important task. It was, at least in my humble view, it was very, very critical to the preservation of democracy in the country, and it was very important that we concluded the process. So I was appalled that GCOM did not put the kind of mechanisms in place to address or to maybe shift staff as needed to go through a complete process. In light of all that we said, there were several instances where the CEO, not having a response to any of the queries, just down his head and listened quietly. I cannot speak to the motives behind that, but I can say that there were several engagements with the CEO where he simply came in, sat there as though he's in profound thought and did absolutely nothing.
As is common in other testimonies thus far, Schumann's testimony also touched on the conduct of IT technician Enrique Liven.
There was a gentleman in the room, about 6 feet tall, braided hair, Afro descent. He restarted the process, I would assume based on CEO's instructions.
Liven started calling inaccurate figures and then eventually said that he too was tired and could no longer continue. Schumann recounted that Liven's intention to stop the process was met with protests by party agents, but that did not stop him.
He picked up the computer, unplugged the computer, folded it, and walked out of the room. He walked out of the room, and if you were acquainted with the Ashman's building, he would have turned left and walked into another room where only GCOM employees were permitted.
Schumann testified that he soon heard a commotion. He recalled that person shouted that Liven was doing something with the computer.
I ran to the door of the room in which he was sitting with the computer screen open. He was seated at the desk with the computer slightly open. I think at that point, when I got there, he had stopped typing, stopped manipulating. When we looked at it, at the computer, when it left the room, there was no USB drive in it. When we got to the room, there was a USB drive inserted in the computer.
Schumann added that Liven made an effort to quickly close that spreadsheet, but took some time. After an uproar, the pre-populated spreadsheet was closed and the correct spreadsheet reopened. The Commission was told that at one point, CEO Lowenfield acknowledged some of what was going on wrong, including inaccurate numbers that were presented. Lowenfield blamed the error on staff being tired and committed to have them corrected. Schumann said that while he was at the Ashman's building, he received a video showing persons clad in GCOM uniforms carefully removing seals from brown envelopes, then resealing them.
From what I understand is that those envelopes, having gone through, and if I may expound a little bit, having gone through the recount process, those envelopes would have contained electoral papers, ballots, official documents, and so on and so forth.
Having gone through a recount process?
Yes. During the recount that followed this exercise, when we got into the recount process, the very same envelopes that we would have seen, well, I say similar envelopes that we are seeing on the screen, were contained in the boxes from the polling stations. So in this video, it would seem as though they're removing the seals from these envelopes. I said, CEO, look at what your staff is doing. This should not be happening. And he said, I will deal with it.
The General Secretary of the United Republican Party, Royal Aaron, witnessed employees of the Guyana Elections Commission using photocopied statements of poll to tabulate the results for District 4. Aaron gave testimony to this effect as he appeared before the Commission of Inquiry into the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections. Aaron told the Commission of the instances when GCOM officials, including Returning Officer Claremont Bingo, attempted to use information from a spreadsheet for the tabulation and verification process. He recalled that there was then a court order that mandated GCOM to use the original SOPs. The URP official said that he and other party agents requested to see the SOPs that were being used. He told the COI that those SOPs used by Mingo did not carry the distinct features of an authentic SOP.
This occasion, the spreadsheet was not being used. They were using SOPs.
When you say they, to whom do you...
GCOM, the Guyana Elections Commission, they were using the statement of polls.
Okay, and is it that someone was calling a number?
Yes, they were calling from the statement to polls, and we inquire after we saw that the numbers were once again inconsistent with what we had. We asked to verify those SOPs that they had with ours. We wanted in particular to feel and touch the SOPs that they had, because it came with specific markings that will allow us to know its authenticity. They were all photocopies.
They were all photocopies?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to say what they were photocopies of?
They were photocopies of the SOPs, original SOPs, I guess, but I'm not guessing, they were copies of the SOPs.
Okay.
Because we know they were copies because they did not bear the markings of originals.
Aaron said that he therefore objected to the use of the SOPs and withdrew from the process after the state of affairs continued. He then took his concerns to the media, after which he had to be escorted home by police because persons believed to have been supporters of the APNU AFC had made threats of bodily harm towards him. Chief Security Officer of the Guyana Elections Commission, Ronald Stewart, has provided intimate details of how the now infamous bomb threat was designed to remove party agents from witnessing the tabulation process for Region 4 during the 2020 regional and general elections. According to Stewart, on March 5, 2020, he was summoned to the Ashminch building by the Deputy Chief Elections Officer, Roxanne Myers. While there, Myers contacted Stewart on his cellular phone. He told the Commission that Myers identified herself and then instructed Stewart to get everyone out of the tabulation room because they were interfering with the work of the returning officer, Clement Mingo.
I told her that that instruction was inappropriate and I am not going to carry it out.
And what did she say?
She said okay and she left, and no, that was the first instruction. She said okay and she terminated the call.
Okay.
Stewart recounted that approximately 15 minutes after the phone call ended, two male ranks entered the building and identified themselves as being from the Criminal Investigation Department of the Guyana Police Force. The ranks informed Stewart that a bomb was planted in the building.
After Mr. Thomas left, did you see the Deputy CEO?
Yes, she came down the steps and came to me and said, Mr. Stewart, you're sitting there and a bomb is planted in the building, please get the people to evacuate. I felt that those people in there were accredited, they were invited, and if Ms. Myers wanted them out, she should have been the person to go in there and tell them to come out, not me.
The GCOM Chief Security Officer, Stewart, said that after failing to get him to comply, Myers went back upstairs where the bomb was allegedly planted. This, Stewart said, he found it odd that GCOM's hierarchy was aware that a bomb was planted in the building, yet they all remained in the building and were only interested in getting party agents and observers to leave the building.
It was plain. Nobody, all the senior people of GCOM were upstairs with other people. Nobody made any attempt to leave upstairs to come downstairs to evacuate the building. Nobody at all left the building at no stage.
So it was just your instructions were directed to the persons in the tabulation room?
Yes.
Stewart told the Commission that he walked off the job at the height of the controversy at Ashmin's building. He recalled feeling as if his integrity and reputation were at stake. In a press statement, the People's Progressive Party condemned the obstruction of an engagement between Minister of Public Service Sonia Prague and residents of Belladrum Region 5 by APNU AFC Member of Parliament Vince Roy Jordan. In its statement, the party said that Minister Prague's visit to the community was as a result of a request made by residents during an earlier visit by President Dr. Irfan Ali. Residents had sought the President's intervention to facilitate access to skills training, scholarships, and other empowerment opportunities. The minister visited the community on Tuesday, November 8, and was prevented from accessing the Community Development Council's building by Jordan and a small group of APNU-AFC activists. The statement added that the PNC-led APNU-AFC has demonstrated time and time again that it is incapable of offering meaningful leadership to their constituents or anyone for that matter, and is therefore in its familiar obstructionist mode, with racism being its tool of choice. While in office, they took multi-million-dollar scholarships for themselves and their relatives and denied ordinary Guyanese these opportunities, the party noted. Their attempt to obstruct the PPPC government's housing drive at Amelia's Ward in Linden Region 10 and at Mocha Arcadia on the east bank of Demerara are just a few examples of how they want development to bypass certain communities so that they can continue to peddle false claims of discrimination, the PPP said. The PPP said that it places blame for this worrying development at the feet of the PNC and opposition leader Aubrey Norton, who has been unabatedly setting a tone of racism and aggression towards the government and its officials. It said that Norton has started pivoting his poisonous rhetoric and confrontational tone towards members of the media, as was recently witnessed during a community rally in the East Bank Demerara community of Mocha Arcadia. The PPP called on civil society and other national stakeholders to condemn the bullying tactics and cowardly behaviours of MP Jordan and Aubrey Norton's racist and aggressive posture and the subtle as well as overt messages he continues to send to his cabal and supporters against the duly elected government and its functionaries. During the last sitting of the National Assembly, the PPPC administration took 7 pieces of legislation to the Parliament for debate. This sitting of the House was boycotted by the PNC-led APNU-AFC MPs, who staged a walkout after being unable to get their way and not having anything of substance to contribute to the debates. Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, Susan Rodriguez, brought some clarity to what took place at Parliament during her weekly program, Making the Case, on Wednesday last.
Of course, he did not use the proper parliamentary standards and procedures, and so the Speaker denied the motion. And true to form, they got up and they left at the beginning of the day. We were there from 10 a.m. to 12 midnight that night. We stayed. All of the PPPC MPs were there, all of us, and we put those bills forward. We went ahead with our debate, and we made our arguments, and we made our case to the people of our country who were listening and who were following the debate. And we put forward these very, very important pieces of legislation.
One piece of legislation debated and passed was the very important Constitutional Reform Commission Act.
The Constitutional Reform Commission Act, which will establish the Constitutional Reform Commission, who will then examine the electoral laws and to ensure that we have reforms that will see the protection and the improvement in the electoral laws of our country, and will promote certainty, accountability, and transparency of the electoral process.
Also debated and passed was the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Amendment Bill, which will address drunk driving and place tougher penalties on those who drink and drive.
A lot of people have been calling for this because you see every day the carnage on our roadways, and so we cannot allow that to continue. In protecting our people, and I was just a moment ago speaking about investing in our people, we also have to protect our people. We have to ensure we keep our people safe, and this is one of the ways that we think will help to reduce the carnage on our roadways. And we have to hold people accountable, people who drink and drive.
The Intoxicating Liquor Licensing Act was also passed, which places some responsibility on bar owners and those who sell alcohol to ensure that those under the influence do not get behind the wheel. The Parliament of Guyana is the highest lawmaking body, as its principal function is to make laws. This explanation was given by MP and Attorney-at-Law Shanchief Datadin on his weekly program, The Thursday Agenda. The MP was at the time rebuffing wild, unfounded, unfair and unreasonable accusations about the Speaker by the opposition.
The Speaker in Parliament is effectively the person who controls Parliament. He is like a judge. He makes his rulings, he gives his directions, he say what should happen, what should not happen, when it should happen. This is the role and function of a Speaker. This is what the Speaker of the House does. Now, the Constitution provides that Parliament will regulate its own conduct. And the Speaker, as we shall say, the person who is in charge of what's going on in Parliament, he is the decision maker as to what happens with conduct.
Opposition leader Aubrey Norton, under the heading Matters of Urgent National Importance, opted to raise an issue of the voters list, asserting that the voters list was bloated.
Now, put this into context. An urgent matter of national importance is something that should be dealt with immediately. During the pandemic, there were instances during the coronavirus, during the floods, there were other instances that those sorts of things would qualify. But addressing the voters list and harping on about the voters list can't qualify as a matter that was an urgent matter of public importance. And who decides this? It's the Speaker, who has to look at the rules. Parliament has standing orders, so he will look at the rules and he will apply. He decided that it was not a matter of an urgent matter of public importance.
The Constitution is clear about the voters list. Residency is not a requirement. The current voters list is in accordance with the laws of Guyana. If one wants to change those rules, it would require an amendment.
The irony of it all is the first bill that Parliament was debating on Monday on the agenda is the Constitutional Reform Bill. That was the first bill. So, Mr. Norton raises a rather preposterous, unfounded, non-compliant would be the best term, but I don't want to get too technical. You have to qualify as an urgent matter of public importance. It did not qualify. The Speaker thought it did not qualify. There were 7 bills on the agenda to be passed that day. You all know, because you see it every day, that we are often in Parliament until 10 o'clock in the night, 12 o'clock in the night, until the next morning on occasion, because we have to get the work of Parliament done, the debates have to be completed. On Monday last, everybody who was in Parliament, the opposition was not present except for Mr. Schuman.
During a recent outreach, President Ali engaged residents of Denhamstel and neighbouring communities in Region 3, where they were informed of government's goals, which include plans for enhancing Denhamstel's infrastructure. President Ali said that a $10 million contract has been awarded for the repair of the community ground in response to concerns raised by locals. This will help to facilitate football training sessions and recreational activities, President Ali stated.
So what we can do, we can be doing back the ground, doing back the pavilion here, and put it in a basketball court. But I just saw the bridge also.
Yes.
The bridge, you need some work on the bridge, so I let them also work on doing some work on the bridge. Yeah, but we got to work on ensuring this thing is done very quickly. Yeah. Okay. How did they get it weather?
Yeah.
And y'all got to monitor it too.
Yes, yes, yes. We
right?
know that, yeah.
All right, so here we're going to do. So we have some agreements on how we can deal with this sporting facility. We'll have agriculture come in and talk to them on the farmers. Right. Because we got to see how we can put all the land into production. That's the important thing. Get all the landowners and let's work with them to ensure that they put the land into production. That is a big thing for us now, right? We have to put the land into production. So that's the second thing. And then, of course, in there,
yes,
you're working on the roads. And
we already have it, sir. It is 6 million in terms of some of the roads here and on the south side of the Amstel that we already went and picked up when we came. We already have the BOQ just for us to get the community, because, Chief, what we're trying to do with the policy is that people from the community should be involved in the building out of the community. So we're getting a couple of people that register the business to be part of that process.
That is a concrete road.
Concrete road, sir.
As a part of his One Guyana vision, President Ali continues to visit communities across Guyana, meeting with residents and addressing their concerns. President Ali on Thursday announced that Cabinet has issued its no objection to the CH4 Linseka being ranked #1 to build the 300 megawatt combined cycle power plant and liquid natural gas plant at Wales West Coast Demerara under an engineering procurement construction contract. In the Facebook live broadcast, President Ali said that Cabinet's no objection will now allow negotiations to proceed to conclude an EPC contract.
The government of Guyana, via Cabinet today, issued its no objection to the ranking of CH4 Linseka as the #1 ranked group to build a 300 megawatt combined cycle power plant and natural gas liquids plant at Wales West Coast Demerara. Under an engineering procurement construction contract, Cabinet's no objection will now allow negotiations to proceed to conclude an EPC contract. Power China was ranked #2 and may be engaged if negotiations fail to conclude a contract with Linseka by end of November.
President Ali said that based on evaluations, the expected date of delivery of the 300 megawatt power plant is by December 2024.
Both top-ranked companies confirmed this deadline. The EPC contract will be supervised by a global supervision firm. The selected supervision firm is Engineers India Limited. The 300 megawatt power plant and NGL plant will be owned by the government of Guyana. Prior to conclusion of the construction, an international firm will be competitively selected to operate the project to international standards and best practice. Exxon is expected to deliver the completed pipeline to the power plant by the 4th quarter of 2024 to achieve commissioning and testing of the 300 megawatt power plant by the end of 2024.
Earlier this year, 9 firms were pre-qualified to bid on the EPC contract. A request for proposals were issued to these pre-qualified bidders. At the closing date of September 13, 5 bids were received. These bids were evaluated for technical compliance and ranking by Stantec and Worley, 2 global engineering firms with expertise in oil and gas. Based on the reports of these international firms, an evaluation team of 3 people, including a representative of Exxon, was appointed. The evaluation team performed the evaluations in accordance with the technical and economic criteria set out in the RFP. And that's the bottom line.